My service in the ATC had now reached a pinnacle, inasmuch that I had achieved all that I had set out to do by gaining my proficiency stars and standards in my chosen subjects, ready for the RAF. I was really thrilled to bits with achieving that. Additionally to my service at home, along with some others, we were invited to participate in weekend camps at a few bomber stations and RAF fighter stations around the county. Truly a fantastic situation, seeing the activity, seeing them prepare for engagement with the enemy. It was something I shall never forget. It only made us want to fly even more, but then we did, because we were offered flights in the what I call the transport planes and personnel planes for a few trips around the county. And that was truly magnificent, because if you appreciate, in those years, flying at all was a very, very rare experience. For us, it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I do recall in particular one breakfast morning at home, getting ready for work and listening to the radio, the news at the same time. And I recall the announcement by the fellow on the radio saying, "This is the BBC News. It is Tuesday, the 6th of June, and I'm pleased to tell you the D-Day invasion of France has begun. The troops have fought and landed on the beaches of France and are making great inroads towards the enemy." Absolutely fantastic news, absolutely fantastic. I couldn't believe it was true. I remember dashing upstairs to my mum, who was still in bed. Mum, I'm shouting, "The news has just said the D-Day has started, the invasion has started, the troops have invaded France." Yeah, look, I don't want you to be late for work. Finish your breakfast and get off to work. Don't be late. I come downstairs and I thought, what on earth was she thinking about? I shall never know. But she wasn't as excited as I was. And of course, when I got to work, the staff were all excited, jumping up and down with joy about the occasion. For once, it looks as though the war was on the turn. Instead of sitting back and being bombed out of our existence, we were now returning the taste of war to the Germans and pushing them back from the French coastline. It was only 1 week later, in fact, when I received my papers, documents and travel warrant to travel by train down to Scarborough and to report to the Grand Hotel. And of course the Grand Hotel had been completely taken over by the RAF and converted into a recruitment and a testing station. So it was not like a hotel, it was more like an RAF camp. All the rooms had been altered into classrooms, workshops, study areas, demonstration areas. Really a truly wonderful situation. They even had a room dedicated to what I call aerial gunnery. They had real working models of gun turrets, machine gun turrets, with the 4 guns going up and down. And we had to take turns in getting into the turrets, under instruction of course, and operating the guns to swing around and etc., to see how we could respond and behave in such an activity. And I might tell you that I deliberately fumbled on that situation, deliberately, because no way did I want them to think that I was a good potential to be an air gunner, because I didn't want to be an air gunner. I wanted to be a wireless operator, so I was concentrating my efforts in that direction while I was here. We went through various stages of aptitude tests, practical aptitude tests, and then going into, in my situation, into a radio room and being tested out on various radio sets to see if we could handle them, and all have exercises to tune in to what they call specialist transmissions to see if we could manage to tune in and locate various stations. And I excelled at that. I excelled at that because, as you know, radio building and use was my hobby, and I was thrilled to bits that I made a good impression with the tutor on that particular occasion. And of course there were classrooms where we had to go in and face an examination paper or a test paper, written tests, and finally being interviewed by a group captain on particular aspects of the RAF, and also our character and our dreams and ambitions. I was thrilled to bits at the end of all this to be invited back in to see a particular officer who told me that I had passed all the tests and achieved the appropriate standards, and I was now essentially a member of the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve, because I'd been accepted and I could enroll and become a member straight away. And I was given my number, 3044389. I've never forgotten it. The fact that I was now technically an aircraftsman and awaiting the papers to be sent to me towards my 18th birthday, when I would be called into the service and serve with the RAF bomber crews. Fantastic. I was over the moon. It was a wonderful, wonderful situation. I should imagine when I was riding back on the train, people would be wondering what that boy with the wide grin on his face was all about, because I just couldn't hide my joy and exuberance for that. And of course I was actually only one of 120 successful candidates out of the 400, so that was quite an achievement for me. Thrilled to bits. The next few months were the happiest months of my life. Truly happy. I had achieved all that I had set out to achieve. I'd gained all my proficiency. I'd worked hard. I'd enjoyed the excitement of my path through the ATC, and finally being accepted into the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve. I could not have been happier. It was a wonderful, wonderful situation. I was so proud going back to work and telling them what my situation was. And of course I had to warn my employer of my eventual call-up, so he would make preparations to replace me. And in the ATC itself, I was proud to show off my documents, to let them see how clever I was and how proud I was and how joyful I was. It was truly a momentous period in my life to have achieved everything I set out, all the years of study and hard work. Time was passing, and here we were to the end of the year. As you know, my birthday is on Boxing Day in December. And early in December, I'm now so excited because I knew it was only a matter of days when I would receive my letter of call-up and the beginning of my new life in the RAF. However, I got a letter, which I can read to you here, addressed to Aircraftsman Second Class Moore, WF 3044 389. That's me. I've got a couple of things here to sort them out. A message from the Secretary of State for Air. It is not long ago that I welcomed you into the Royal Air Force. Now it is with great regret that I have to tell you that the Royal Air Force is compelled to forego your services. My God, I could cry. I could cry because I knew what the rest of the letter was going to say. My dream had become a nightmare, and my heart was broken. You will already have been informed, both by letter and by personal interview, of the reasons for this change. I know that you must feel keen disappointment in having to leave the service of your choice. That is an understatement. Your chief wish, however, will be to make the biggest contribution you can towards serving the victory of the Allied cause, and in the carefully judgment of your services, you are more urgently required at the present stage of the war in that service in which you will be of most immediate value. Those of you who have served in the Air Training Corps will perhaps feel a special sense of disappointment, but your pre-service training will have taught you that the priority over those of the individual, the training you have received, and the qualities you have developed in the Air Training Corps. Archibald Sinclair, Secretary of State for Air. How sad can anyone be? I was broken-hearted, tearful, despondent that my dreams have been shattered. My wish, desires, and ambitions destroyed by the circumstances of war. I wasn't fully aware at the time why all this happened. I was just so sad and tearful and shattered, not knowing what my future now would be. I was just despondent and full of despair. I suppose it might be sensible to comment on the subject of my RAF discharge, not that it makes any difference to my feelings of bitter disappointment. How can it, when such dreams and ambition were totally destroyed? And the memory of that still haunts me, even after all those years. However, Britain ended up fighting on many fronts, mostly in Europe, but also in the Middle East and the Far East, suffering huge and devastating losses of manpower in the armies, which could only be efficiently replaced by the transfer of men out of the Navy and the Air Force, and it was this necessity in which I was caught up in. It didn't ease my disappointment, nor my bitterness towards the army, in which I served for 3.5 years. However, this year, 73 years after the end of the war, and during the completion and opening of the Bomber Command War Memorial, I learned of their own losses during the war. Some 55,600 crew members killed and many more wounded or captured. But what horrified me most of all was learning of the very brief lifespan of the volunteers that they had. Very brief. Perhaps it would be better if we listened to some of the stories of the few who survived.
It is for them, not for us.
This is a profound moment, a moment which has been a long time coming, but one when we at last deliver a monument, a memorial to the men and women who served for Bomber Command.
Of course you were scared. You just didn't know whether you were going to be alive the next half minute, you know.
And the bomber boys would pay the ultimate price. By the end of the war, half of them would be dead.
Every aircrew man, roughly, around about 4 or 5 trips was the most a bomber crew done before he got shot down.
We had the second highest losses in the whole of Bomber Command.
The sacrifice had been immense. 112,000 passed through Bomber Command. More than 55,000 were killed, a quite extraordinary number.
It was 18, 19-year-old boys who made a major contribution to victory.
The average age of a Lancaster crew member was just 22. Life expectancy for a new recruit was just 2 weeks, about the same as in the trenches during the First World War.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Perhaps I should be grateful, and I am, that my discharge from the Air Force could actually have saved my life. And perhaps I would not otherwise have been able to appear before you, telling my stories in my video diary. How weird is that?